All right, we're recording.
Good. Hi everybody. My name is Golnish Hakim Davar, and I am the president of the Iranian-American Bar Association. And I'm joined with my colleague Shirin Afsus. I will let her present herself and introduce herself, but we're really grateful to be here at IACC, who is hosting us, and we're going to have a discussion about Census 2020. So Shirin, quickly, I'll turn it over to you.
Hi, everybody. My name is Shirin Afsus. I'm an attorney in Northern Virginia and DC, and I am also a member of the Iranian-American Bar Association for the DC chapter.
Wonderful. So we are here to talk about the Census 2020 and maybe answer some of the frequently asked questions that have come up over the past several months and possibly years for many of our friends in the community. I understand that this is many individuals, including myself, we have received documents in the mail, and it's very exciting to receive those documents, and then we'll go over why that is exciting. I think Shirin also has a message for everybody, so I turn it back over to her.
Sure. So just in case we have anyone who is going to be watching us who does not have a great understanding of English, we wanted to make sure that we say part of this in Farsi. So سلام، اگر شما نگران هستین به خاطر اینکه توی پست از دولت امریکا براتون کاغذی اومده یا نامه اومده در مورد سرشماری که توی سال 2020 ببخشید داره انجام میشه، اصلا لازم نیست نگران باشین. این یه کاریه که دولت هر 10 سال یه بار انجام میده و امسال مخصوصا برای همه ایرانی‌ها خیلی مهمه که همه ایرانی‌ها که توی امریکا زندگی میکنن، به خصوص کسایی که یا سیتیزن هستن یا گرین کارت دارن، شمرده بشیم. به خاطر اینکه اگر شمرده نشیم، خیلی از کارهایی که دولت امریکا برای مردم امریکا انجام میده به این شماره گیری ربط داره. اگر درست نشمرن کسایی که توی همه شهرها، ایالت‌ها و قسمت‌های امریکا زندگی میکنن، تعداد کسایی که توی کنگره میره برای هر ایالت فرق میکنه، تعداد بچه‌هایی که تو مدرسه به هر کلاس میرن فرق میکنه. basically به همه چی ربط داره. برای همین خیلی مهمه که نذاریم ترسمون در مورد اینی که باید مشخصات خصوصی خودمون رو پر بکنیم جلوگیری بکنه از اینی که شمرده بشیم. این خیلی مهمه.
That's absolutely correct. And to reiterate what Shirin was mentioning, the census is completed every 10 years. The last census that was completed was in 2010. So we're coming up to 2020. You may have seen that April 1st was a suggested date for completing the census, but it was really not a deadline. So you can still complete the census. If you have received an envelope in the mail, make sure you use the code given to complete the census. So Shirin, I have a question for you. I'm wondering, and you did touch on this a little bit, but why should we complete the Census 2020? Why is it important for us?
So the census is an incredibly important way for the government to identify how much and how many resources need to be divided amongst the different cities, states, and counties across the US. Simple things from how schools are created, classrooms are created, all the way to how many representatives each state gets in Congress. It's very important that every immigrant group, including Iranians, get counted adequately because, as we all know, there are certain services that the government provides that are solely for each group of individuals. There are a lot of other resources that come after the government looks at the census as well, including things like college scholarships, university tuition programs, medical systems and hospitals. There are a lot of areas that don't have adequate resources in the medical field, simply because the last census in 2010 identified only a low number of people living in that region. And as we know right now, because of the COVID-19 pandemic, that's really impacting certain communities. These are just some of the very small reasons why the census is important. On a more broader scale, it's very important to identify ourselves as a group that is a large part of the community for Iranian Americans. So first and foremost, we want to be counted as people who are living in a country. And secondly, because we are a minority group, we want to make sure that all of our resources are being properly provided and that we are being properly counted. The counting is really important, and we shouldn't forget that. It's every 10 years, and a lot can change every 10 years, as we have seen. It can impact voting, it can impact lines that are drawn in different counties, and whether you're on one side of the line or another side of the line. So it's very important. And let me know if you want me to translate anything afterwards.
No, that's absolutely true. And as you mentioned, having every individual counted is really important for also the voting structure, voting system, voting. We have all heard about gerrymandering, knowing where individuals are located, where different communities, individuals from different communities, how they're distributed within the city, within a region. That really helps us get a better understanding of how the population is divided. And that in itself makes it extremely important for Iranians to be counted. Now, there are some numbers about, out there of how many Iranians are actually in the US. And we want to have an accurate understanding. We want to really, this time around, be counted, all of us be counted, so that we have an accurate number of Iranian Americans who are residing in the United States. So having said that, I know that there is a lot of concern, and Shirin, you alluded to that at the very beginning in Farsi as well, that many individuals may be concerned about the protection of their information. How do we know that the information is protected? Can we really trust that the information that we're giving is protected?
Well, that's a great question. The information is supposed to be protected for 72 years. The census is anonymous. So even though it comes to each of our addresses, and when you fill it out online, you provide first name, last name, and your racial information along with your date of birth, that information is supposed to be strictly confidential. Realistically, everyone should feel comfortable about providing that information, because none of the information that is being provided is anything that the government doesn't already have. But if anyone is really concerned about it, and they don't want to fill out the online version where it seems that you have to provide your first name and last name, you can obtain a paper copy where you can leave your name and identifying information that you don't feel comfortable providing blank, and then you can fill out the appropriate areas that don't require your name. It's just a way to be counted. This is not some trick by the government to get private information about first name, last name, date of birth. You don't have to provide your social security number, and you don't have to provide your immigration status. A lot of people were really concerned about whether they would have to provide their immigration status, and that's not something that the census asks for. So really what we're providing is first, middle, and last name, date of birth, and how we identify ourselves as a race. So it would be whatever you identify, and an Iranian if you're an Iranian-American.
That's so important. I'm so happy that you actually touched on the citizenship question and the immigration status. That is one of the points I think that has created hesitation for individuals that are completing the census or that are receiving the census material. And we should all know that this very question was actually brought to the Supreme Court, and that question about citizenship has been very clearly left out. So you do not have to be concerned that anything about your citizenship will be included in the questionnaire, and that there's no question about your citizenship. The other question that I think comes up is, for many of us, is how is this information used? And as she mentioned, it will be kept for 72 years, but it is to be used solely for statistical purposes. So only for numbers. None of your information, no part of your information will be used for any other reason than for really figuring out how many individuals live where. Why is it, Sharon, just to reiterate, why is it so important now that for Iranians specifically to make sure that they are taking a step, counting, and are not afraid of completing the form? And I'll add another question to kind of a follow-up question to that. What if someone is an Iranian who is not living in the US 100% of the time, but is here majority of the time? Should they still complete the questionnaire?
So, to answer the first part of your question, it's always been very important for Iranian Americans to be counted, but particularly so now that we know the importance of really being counted. I already touched on a lot of the resource division that comes from being counted for the census, but for Iranian Americans, it's important that we know exactly how many members of this community live here. This is important for immigration purposes. It's important for many of the things that the government does and implements throughout the next 10 years. So we definitely want to show not only the Iranian community, but just the government that we are a community of X number of people and we're here. And that's very important because it's important to be counted. That's really what the census is about. It's about being counted. As to your second question of what if I don't live here the majority of the time, or I have a relative who's only here 80% of the time? Well, the census has very specific questions about how people should be counted. And the rules are very clear. If the person lives the majority of the time in the United States up until April 1st of 2020, then they should be counted as living here. So if you are here for the majority of the time up until April 1st, 2020, then you should be counted. We want to make sure that we are giving an accurate depiction, right? We don't want to double count anybody, but we also don't want to not count people who are living here.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So to move forward to, now that we know the importance of the census and completing the census, maybe we can go a little bit over what kind of questions are there. So there are only a total of 10 questions, which is very simple to complete. Maybe you can tell us a little bit about what type of questions are on the census.
Sure. So we already talked about a couple of those questions, right? So like you said, there's 10 questions in total. The majority of those questions are very just categorically statistical things like what is your name, first name, last name, and middle name if you have a middle name. What is your date of birth? What is your address? And how many people reside in your household? And there are very specific rules about how you can count the people who reside in your household. So for example, college students, if they live primarily at home while going to college, they get counted as living in the home that they share with their parents. But if they are residing primarily in the dorms or a sorority or a fraternity house, then they get counted by their university. Pursuant to the rules, every university in a census year is supposed to provide a number of students who reside in university housing, and that includes fraternities and sororities. There's actually a very specific way to fill out the census, so it's very step by step. The first step is just providing, like I said, the name, birth date, and address. And then it goes into questions about who lives in the household and how each of those people would identify themselves. So for Iranian Americans, they can either select their race as white, Black, African American, Hispanic, Middle Eastern, or other. And I'm sorry, Middle Eastern is part of the white category. Or they can write other and then write in Iranian. So basically, we want to make sure that Iranian Americans are writing in Iranian, regardless of how they categorize themselves in terms of the boxes that get checked.
So,
Oh,
can you guys hear me?
yes.
Okay, good. So I wanted to just to clarify a little bit more on um, what we would see if we log in to the census.gov page. Hopefully everybody can see my screen. Um, what happens is once you receive, you may have received an envelope which identifies itself as Census 2020. You may you may be away and have not received this. So at some point you will have, it's possible that someone may call you or an interviewer may come to your house to ask you the same questions that are on the census. But at this stage, if you have received an envelope, it's very simple. It has an ID number in the envelope. You can go in and type in your ID. But if you have not received it, you can still go to 2020census.gov, and on the page, you can actually identify your address and start completing the questionnaire. So,
What if I need to do it in a different language?
so that's a really good question. It's actually available in 49 different languages. And what I found is if you go into the census website and you log in, very simple. There is a globe. There's a small globe on the screen. It says English, and it gives you a drop-down menu. The drop-down menu takes you to all the different languages that are available. On this screen, the last kind of item that we see is Farsi. So I clicked on Farsi, and the page that came up is this wonderful, very helpful page, which is all in Farsi with a video that takes us through step by step how to complete the census. So it is actually quite simple, and we can, it wouldn't even take more than 2 or 3 minutes to complete. So once you select Farsi as a language, if that's the choice, or any other language that you choose, you can go through, you can watch the video and start the census. I have put down just what you will see. This is not the full screen, but there is a guiding ribbon at the top of the page. So once you log in, as soon as your address is verified, you start completing the different set of information. Household questions are really questions about how many individuals live in your household, who is the head of household. So if you have identified yourself as the head of household, you make sure that you continue that, and then you include everybody else that lives in your household. That includes children, so babies, newborns. They're also included as part of the census. So if you have a child that was just recently born, congratulations, make sure that they're counted, and make sure they're counted as Iranian. The next thing that you will see is the age, and you will see a question for the age of the different individuals in the household. So it will ask you, what is the age? What is your age? It will have your name, and you can, drop down menu. It's very simple. You can go through it and complete the different categories of age and different numbers that are associated with you. The next question, this is the category of people question. The next question is about whether or not you have Hispanic origins. So you may have Hispanic origins, you may have family members, father, mother, that could be Hispanic origin. You can select that. But remember, you can have Hispanic origin and still be Iranian. If your mother or father was of Hispanic origin, and then your other parent was Iranian, you can choose, Hispanic origin and then write in Iranian. The next question, which is the question that we have been talking about on the actual questionnaire, is question 9, but on the actual computer-based system, there is no number associated with this question. So here it says, what is the individual's race? And here I have my mother's, since I was completing my mother's census. So what is her race? Here you can choose white, Black or African American, American Indian or Alaska Native, Chinese, Filipino, Asian, or other Asian, Native Hawaiian, Samoa, and then you have here some other race. You can choose any of the races and write Iranian. So if you have a parent who is Asian and another parent who is Iranian, then you can identify as both. If you identify as white, but also Iranian, you can identify as white Iranian. So you don't necessarily have to choose other and write Iranian. For me, I don't identify as white, so and my family does not. So we wrote some other race and typed in and selected Iranian. So as we see, it's actually a very simple form, and that will take you then to the last question, which will be completing if there were any relationships. If there were multiple individuals in the household, it will be a question about what is the relationship of you with other individuals in the household. So as we see, it's very simple and kind of self-explanatory. You can complete it in Farsi if you would like. And just make sure that as you're going through the census for the question of race, that you're very accurate and you type in whether it is Iranian, something else, but also, identify the Iranian portion of your race as well.
So, Golnush, I have a question for you. What if I'm not a US citizen? Should I still fill out the census?
Absolutely. So anyone who lives in the United States, resides in the United States, of any immigration status should complete the census, whether or not they are in the process of their green card, or if they are a student on some type of visa, or if they are not citizens yet, green card holders, or becoming citizens, or are currently citizens. Everyone who is residing in the United States should complete the census so that they can be counted.
What if I don't get anything in the mail about the census and then somebody knocks on my door? Does that mean that I'm in trouble with the government?
Absolutely not. So the people who are who are working for the Census Bureau, they're wonderful individuals who have temporarily signed up to do this work, to go to people's homes and make sure that everybody's counted. They will only ask you questions that we discussed, so they will not ask any additional questions. The interviewers may come in and, well, they won't come in, they will come to your door and ask you the questions and we'll leave. So nothing to be afraid of. They won't ask any identifying question beyond what we talked about. So name, address, number of individuals in your household, head of household, age, race, and the relationship of individuals in the household. So it's really nothing to be alarmed about if someone comes from the Census Bureau to ask you questions. So I know it's a lot of information, but it is actually quite a simple process. And we have gone through it. Both Shirin and I have gone through it, and it was it's very simple. At the beginning, when you put down your name, you may wonder, well, what kind of identifying questions are they asking me? But that's really so to make sure that you're not double counted, right? So that you're not they're not two Golnush Hakim Devars living in the same address at the same time, so that it is accurate information.
So one thing that some people have been concerned about are also scams concerning the census, because it is a lot of identifying information. One very easy way to make sure that you are answering the census on the appropriate website, if you do it online, is to just look at the URL. You want to make sure that it's .gov. If it's .com, that's not the correct URL. Don't enter anything on that page. If you get anything in the mail, it's very clear when something has come from the US government, the type of document, and it'll say that it's the 2020 US Census. If you get something that looks fishy, then obviously, take every precaution and don't submit any of your information to something that doesn't look legitimately as if it's related to the census. Basically, just use your common sense and don't worry, don't panic. Just take it step by step, like Golnush said, and just do it appropriately at either .gov or on the official U.S. Census forms that you can obtain. Or if someone comes to your door, if they don't identify themselves as someone who is working for the census, you don't have to provide your information to them. You can ask them to verify that they are in fact working for the census.
Right. Absolutely. So Shirin, I think we have covered quite a lot of a lot of ground, and we've given a lot of information. I have one final question that I think may come up for many, and we have talked about it um, before as well, which is about college students. I know there were some questions about, well, what happens, especially right now with the quarantine, what happens when college students are at home, but they have another address? How do they address that? How should they complete the census?
So there's actually two ways that college students can be addressed. If a college student lives primarily at home with their parents during the year, then the majority of the time is spent at home. They should count on the census at home. However, if we have a college student who lives in another town, another city, another state, then they should count as part of the university or college that they attend. Every university and college institution in a census year has to provide a statistical number of students who live in housing on campus or live in sorority or fraternity houses. The university takes care of those students. So if you are the parent of a student who lives primarily on campus, doesn't live the majority of time at home, then you would not count those students. And if you have any questions about how to do this, you can enter the student's information when you're filling in your census information. And then there will be a little box that you can check saying that they don't live at home the majority of the year. That way you can make sure that you are not double counting the same person twice, and you're also making sure that you're being truthful on the census.
That's a great point, to make sure that you're truthful. This is by the Constitution, we are required, we're asked to complete the census. So it's very important, and it is important for us to be truthful, accurate, and make sure that every single one of us are counted. Thank you so much, Shane, for joining me on this in this journey, in this talk, and I hope that everybody is able to have a little bit of a calmer mind and is able to complete the census and write in Iranian.
Thank you very much, Golnush. And if anybody does have any other questions, on the website that Golnush showed, when you change the language into Farsi, if you prefer Farsi, there is a frequently asked questions section that will also answer any outstanding questions that we may not have covered.
Yeah, thank you. Well, I hope everybody has a safe day. Did you have any questions?
I just wanted to say on behalf of IACC and Paris Place, thank you very much for your extremely informative talk. And it sounds like you addressed a lot of the fears that seem to be unwarranted. And I think the bigger fear here is if, as a community, we don't fill out this census and we don't get counted. So thank you so much for addressing all that. And, you know, all the power to our community. I think, you know, we hope to be counted this year and for many years to come. So thank you so much.
Absolutely. Thank you. Thank you for having us join this call, this important discussion.
Thank you.
Have a wonderful day, everybody. Have a wonderful evening, and stay safe.
Thank you.
Bye.
Bye-bye.